The cargo ship named Starlight Road drifted slowly through the black sea of stars. Inside the pilot's seat sat a man named Morrow, a lone trader who carried supplies between distant colonies. He was not rich and not famous, only a man who worked hard to survive among endless worlds. That day, his luck finally turned against him. The deep hum of the ship's engine gave a sudden crack, followed by a long silence. Morrow felt the vibrations stop under his feet. Warning lights flashed red across the control board. The numbers showed that the engine core had shut down. "No, no, no, not here," Morrow whispered as he hit the switches again. He tried to restart the engine, but nothing answered. The ship shook once and then floated quietly like a dead fish in the water. Outside the window, he saw nothing but empty stars and a long field of dark rocks spinning slowly. It was the mining belt, a dangerous place to lose power. Morrow leaned back in his seat. His hands rubbed his tired face. Great, just great. Out of fuel lanes, no repair dock nearby, and food for maybe 4 days. Perfect place to die. He stood up and checked the storage room. Cans of dried food, a little water, 1 backup oxygen tank, and a broken toolkit. He had no way to fix the engine. The ship's emergency beacon could send a weak call, but in the mining belt, signals often got lost among the spinning rocks. He sat down again, staring at the stars. Hours passed. Silence filled the ship except for the soft click of cooling metal. Morrow thought about his family back on a far-off planet. He thought about the colonies waiting for the goods he carried. He thought about how small one man really was in the middle of endless space. Just when he was losing hope, the radar beeped. A small dot appeared on the screen, moving fast toward him. Morrow jumped to his feet. "A ship," he said out loud. At first he feared raiders, but the dot was too small, far too tiny to be a raider vessel. The dot grew closer until Morrow saw it outside the window. It was a small craft, no bigger than his storage room, shaped like a round pod with 3 shining lights. The pod stopped beside his ship and connected a docking tube. Morrow froze. He had no weapon, no crew, and no idea who was coming aboard. The airlock hissed. The door opened. Out stepped a figure that made Morrow blink twice. It was not a man, not a woman, but a small alien, no taller than 4 feet. Its head was round with wide, dark eyes that seemed too large for its face. Its hands were short but strong, holding a strange box of tools. The alien looked up at Morrow, tilted its head, and gave a short grunt. Then, without waiting for permission, it marched straight past him into the engine room. "Hey, wait! Who are you? What are you doing?" Morrow called, chasing after. The alien did not answer. It opened the toolbox, pulled out glowing instruments Morrow had never seen, and began working on the engine. Sparks flew. The alien climbed inside small spaces where Morrow's arms could not fit. It tapped, twisted, and welded at incredible speed. Morrow stood there speechless. He had worked on ships his whole life, but he had never seen repairs done like this. The alien worked as if it had built the engine itself. After nearly an hour, the silent ship came alive again. The deep hum returned. Lights glowed green across the panel. The engine roared gently like a living heart. Morrow's mouth hung open. His ship was alive again. The alien closed the toolbox and wiped its hands. It turned to Morrow and gave a short nod. "You fixed it," Morrow said, his voice shaking. "You really fixed it?" The alien gave no words. It only pointed at itself, and tapped its chest with pride, then pointed at the engine. Morrow laughed. Yes, you fixed it. I don't know how, but you did. Thank you." He reached into the storage and pulled out a can of dried fruit. "Here, take this as payment. It's all I can offer." The alien looked at the food, then shook its head. It pointed toward the corridor where Morrow's small bunk was located. Morrow frowned. You don't want food? You want to sleep? The alien nodded once. It picked up its toolbox and walked toward the bunk as if it had already decided. Morrow stood in the hall, confused. A stranger had just walked onto his ship, fixed the most important part of it, and now was claiming his bed. He should have been, angry, maybe even scared. But instead, he felt something else. Relief, curiosity, and maybe a little hope. The alien climbed onto the bunk, curled up without saying a word, and closed its wide eyes. Morrow scratched his head. Well, I guess that's one way to ask for a room. He laid a blanket on the floor for himself, still shaking his head. His ship was working again, his life had been saved, and now a small alien slept peacefully in his bed as if it had lived there forever. For the first time since the engine died, Morrow smiled. Perhaps his journey was not over yet. Perhaps it was only the beginning. Morrow woke to the soft hum of the ship's engine. For a moment, he thought everything had been a dream. But when he opened his eyes and turned toward the bunk, he saw the small alien curled up under his blanket, sleeping soundly. The memory came. Rushing back. The engine had died. The ship was drifting. Then this strange little being had appeared, fixed everything, and taken over his bed. Morrow rubbed his face. So that really happened, he muttered. He stood and stretched. His back hurt from sleeping on the floor, but at least he was alive. He checked the control board. The readings were better than before. Not only had the alien fixed the core, but the power flow looked smoother, more stable. Morrow frowned. He had tried dozens of times to adjust that system and failed. How did a stranger fix it in less than an hour? The alien stirred and opened its wide eyes. It blinked at Morrow, then sat up slowly. Without a word, it picked up its small box of glowing tools and walked toward the engine room again. "Morning to you, too," Morrow said with a sigh. He followed, curious. Inside the engine room, the alien was already busy. It opened panels Morrow had sealed years ago, cutting through layers of dust and metal. Sparks lit the air. The alien muttered in a soft, rhythmic language, tapping its chest now and then as if reminding itself of something. Morrow leaned against the doorway. "You know, I don't even know your name." The alien paused. It pointed at its chest and said, "Rill." "Rill," Morrow repeated. The alien nodded. "Well, I'm Morrow. Guess we're shipmates now, huh?" Rill ignored him and crawled deeper into the machine. Morrow sighed again, but deep down he was impressed. He had met many mechanics in his life, but none moved with such purpose. Every action had meaning. Every tool had a place, and every sound of the engine seemed to answer Ryle's touch. Hours passed. Rill kept working, pulling out wires, replacing parts with shiny strips from his toolbox, and even drawing strange marks along the walls. Morrow tried to help once, holding a light, but Rill gently pushed his hand away. Clearly, the alien preferred to work alone. Finally, Rill stepped back and wiped his forehead. The engine hummed louder, smoother, almost like a song. The vibration of the ship changed too, softer and stronger at the same time. Morrow's eyes widened. "You've improved it again, haven't you? It feels new." Rill gave a small smile, the first Morrow had seen, then nodded. Morrow laughed. "You're something else, Rill. I've spent half my life trying to keep this old bucket alive, and in 2 days you've made it better than new." Rill closed the toolbox, tapped the bunk once as he walked by, then left the room. Morrow stared after him. "So that's how it is. You fix my ship, and in return you get my bed." Later, Morrow cooked a small meal in the galley. He set 2 bowls on the table, one for himself and one for Rill. The alien studied the food with suspicion at first, but then tasted it. Rill's eyes lit up, and he quickly finished the bowl. Morrow smiled. "So you do like food, just not as payment." They spent the next days traveling through the mining belt. Rill rarely spoke, but he was always working. He repaired broken lights, cleaned the air filters, and even patched holes in the hull. Each time, he used those glowing tools, shaping metal as if it were soft clay. Morrow tried to start conversations. Sometimes Rill answered with simple words, sometimes with only gestures. But slowly, Morrow began to understand. A tap on the chest meant pride or success. A shake of the head meant refusal. A long blink meant tiredness. One evening, Morrow sat in the pilot seat while Rill worked quietly nearby. The stars drifted past the window. "You know, I used to hate being alone out here," Morrow said. "Months on end, just me and the ship. Nothing but silence. But now, it's not so bad." Rill looked up from his work and tilted his head. "I mean it," Morrow said. "I don't know why you helped me. Maybe it was luck, maybe fate. But I'm glad you're here." Rill gave no answer, but his wide eyes softened for a moment before he went back to his tools. The next morning, Morrow discovered something new. The ship's navigation system, which had always lagged and flickered, now ran perfectly. Maps loaded faster, coordinates adjusted without error. Ryle had clearly worked through the night. Morrow shook his head in amazement. "You're not just fixing the engine, you're fixing everything. This ship is going to be a palace by the time you're done." Rill tapped the wall proudly and gave a small grunt. But not everything was calm. On the edge of the mining belt, the radar beeped again. This time, it was not a tiny pod. Two large ships appeared on the screen, moving fast. Raiders. Morrow felt his chest tighten. Raiders were no joke. They robbed lonely ships, sometimes worse. His hands shook as he gripped. "The controls." "Rill," he said quickly. "We might have trouble." Rill walked over, peered at the screen, then at Morrow. The alien gave a slow nod, as if to say, "I understand." Then he picked up his toolbox and went straight back to the engine. Morrow swallowed hard. "Guess I'll trust you. I don't have a choice." "Do I?" The raider ships grew closer. Alarms blared. Morrow powered up the shields, though he knew they were weak. His heart pounded. He was not ready for a fight. Behind him, the sound of tools rang again. Sparks lit up the engine room. Ryle worked faster than ever, muttering in his strange language, hands moving like lightning. Morrow gritted his teeth. "Come on, little guy. Whatever you're doing, do it fast." The stars outside filled with danger, and the moment of truth approached. The warning sirens screamed through the ship as the two raider vessels closed in. Morrow's hands shook on the controls, sweat running down his forehead. His ship had never been built for combat. Against raiders, he was nothing more than easy prey. But behind him, in the engine room, the sound of clanging and sparks carried a different message. Rill was working, faster than Morrow had ever seen. The alien's small body moved with impossible speed, crawling into tight spaces, pulling outwires and slamming new parts into place. His strange, glowing tools hissed as they cut and welded. Morrow stared at the radar. "They'll be on us in minutes," he muttered. "Come on, Rill. Whatever you're doing, make it a miracle." Then, just as the raiders launched their first warning shots, the ship came alive. The hum of the engine grew deeper, stronger. The vibrations under Morrow's feet felt like thunder. The ship's old power had been transformed into something fierce. Rill ran into the cockpit and pointed to the controls. His wide eyes burned with focus. He gestured for Morrow to push the ship forward. "You upgraded it again, didn't you?" Morrow asked, his voice unsteady. Rill only gave a sharp nod. Morrow hit the throttle. To his shock, the ship leapt forward like a beast freed from chains. The stars blurred, the engines roared, and the raiders' shots missed wide. The little cargo ship raced through the mining belt with a speed Morrow had never dreamed possible. The raiders gave chase, firing again and again. But Rill was ready. He pressed buttons on the panel Morrow had never touched, activating shields that glowed brighter than before. Shots struck, but bounced away, leaving only harmless sparks. Morrow laughed in disbelief. "You didn't just fix my ship. You turned it into something else. Something alive." Rill tapped his chest with pride, then pointed at the raiders. His meaning was clear. "Keep going. Don't stop." With Rill guiding him, Morrow weaved through the dense rocks of the mining belt. Sharp stones and spinning debris made the path dangerous, but his ship moved like it had grown wings. The raiders tried to follow, but their heavy ships could not match the speed or the precision. At last, after a long chase, the radar showed, the raiders breaking off. They turned back, unwilling to risk further damage. Morrow slumped in his chair, gasping for breath. "We made it! I can't believe it! We actually made it!" Rill stood beside him, calm as ever, though his chest rose and fell quickly from exhaustion. He gave a firm nod, then walked back toward the bunk. Without hesitation, the alien climbed into the bed, set his toolbox down nearby, and stretched out as if nothing unusual had happened. Morrow blinked. "Wait, that's it? You save my life, fix my ship, outrun raiders, and then just take a nap?" Rill closed his eyes, ignoring the human's words. Morrow shook his head, half amused and half confused. "You really are something else." That night, while Rill slept, Morrow sat in the cockpit thinking. The alien had asked for nothing. No payment, no reward, only the bunk. At first, Morrow had thought it strange. But now he realized it was more than just a place to sleep. The bunk was a claim, a statement. This ship was no longer Morrow's alone. In the morning, Morrow tried to test his guess. He walked over to the bunk and gently shook Ryle awake. "Hey, little guy, I was thinking maybe I'll need my bed back today." Rill sat up slowly. His wide eyes studied Morrow for a long moment. Then, without a word, he pointed at the engine room, then at the bunk. His gesture was simple, but powerful. "I fixed the heart of this ship. The bed is mine." Morrow chuckled nervously. "So, that's how it is? Repairs for rent?" Rill tilted his head, but said nothing. Morrow sighed. He looked around his small ship. It was cleaner, stronger, safer than it had ever been. He thought of how easily he would have died without Rill. And then he thought of the lonely nights he had spent traveling through endless stars. Now, the ship felt alive again, not because of the repairs, but because of the presence of this strange, stubborn little alien. "Fine," Morrow said at last, throwing his hands up. "You win. The bunk is yours. Just don't snore too loudly." Rill gave a short grunt that sounded almost like a laugh. From that day on, their routine was set. Rill worked tirelessly, fixing and improving every part of the ship, and at night, he claimed the bunk without question. Morrow took the floor or the chair, learning not to complain, but it wasn't just repairs. Slowly, Rill began to leave his mark on the ship. Small carvings appeared along the walls, symbols that glowed faintly in the dark. Pipes ran smoother, lights shined brighter, air tasted cleaner. The Starlight Road was becoming something new, something beyond Morrow's understanding. One evening, while Morrow was checking the cargo hold, he found Rill sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing symbols with a glowing stick. The alien looked up, then pointed at Morrow and at the ship. "You're making it yours," Morrow said softly. "Not just mine anymore." Rill nodded. Morrow sat beside him, watching. "Well, I guess that makes us partners. Strange partners, but still." The masked alien didn't answer, but the small smile on his face was enough. For Morrow, the days of being alone in the stars were over. He had gained not just a mechanic, but a companion who asked for nothing except a single bold claim, the right to his bunk. The Starlight Road drifted smoothly through space, its engines purring like a healthy animal. Morrow sat in the cockpit, hands resting lightly on the controls. For the first time in years, he did not feel nervous about every sound and flicker on the board. The ship felt strong, alive, and reliable. He knew exactly why. Because of the small alien who had taken over his bunk and, somehow, his life. Rill was in the corridor, standing on a crate so he could reach a panel near the ceiling. Sparks lit the air as he worked with his glowing tools. He hummed in his strange language, a sound that was neither music nor speech, but something in between. Morrow leaned back in his chair and listened. "You know," he said loudly so Rill could hear, "I used to hate the sound of repairs. It always meant something had broken. But when you do it, it sounds like progress." Rill glanced at him, blinking once, then returned to his work. Morrow grinned. "Not much of a talker, are you? That's fine, I can talk enough for both of us." When the panel clicked back into place, the air system hummed more smoothly than before. The stale taste in the cabin faded, replaced with a fresh, clean flow. Rill hopped down from the crate and wiped his hands. He tapped the wall proudly, then tapped his chest. "I know," Morrow said. "You did it. Another job well done." Days passed, and a rhythm formed. Rill worked during most hours, crawling through narrow shafts, tuning wires, polishing circuits, and upgrading systems. Morrow flew the ship, handled cargo logs, and cooked meals. At first, their communication was clumsy, but slowly they began to understand one another with gestures, simple words, and shared looks. One night, Morrow sat at the small dining table with 2 steaming bowls of stew. He waved when Rill entered. "Come on, little guy, sit, you've earned it." Rill climbed onto the chair opposite him. He sniffed the bowl, then ate quickly, his wide eyes showing approval. Morrow chuckled. "You eat. Like you work, fast and serious." Rill tilted his head but kept eating. After a while, Morrow grew quiet. He stared at his food, then at the alien across from him. "You know, Rill, I've been alone a long time. Too long. When you came aboard, I thought it was just another problem. But you've changed everything. I don't feel like I'm drifting through the stars alone anymore." Rill paused. His eyes softened, and he gave a small nod before finishing his meal. From that moment, something between them shifted. They were no longer just man and mechanic, no longer just captain and stowaway. They were becoming a team. The proof came a few days later when the navigation console began to flicker again. Morrow groaned. "Not this thing. I've fixed it a dozen times. It always breaks." Rill stepped forward, placing a small hand on the panel. He looked at Morrow and pointed at himself. "You think you can fix it?" Morrow asked. "Go ahead, it's all yours." Rill opened the console and worked quickly. Morrow expected the usual: sparks, wires, a few hours of noise. Instead, Rill added small glowing strips, carving strange marks that glimmered faintly. When he was done, the console lit up brighter than ever. Maps appeared faster and the controls felt smoother. Morrow whistled. "You didn't just fix it, you made it better." "Again?" Rill tapped his chest, then pointed at the bunk down the hall. Morrow laughed. Yeah, I know. The bunk is yours, you don't need to remind me." That night, while Rill slept peacefully in the bunk, Morrow lay on the floor with a thin blanket. His back ached, but he smiled. He thought about the day's repairs, about the way Rill's eyes had softened at dinner, about the strange bond forming between them. "Maybe this is what I needed all along," Morrow whispered to himself. "Not just a working ship, but someone to share it with." The next day, their teamwork was tested. As they passed through another stretch of the mining belt, the ship's sensors detected a dangerous surge of radiation from a nearby star. Alarms blared. Morrow gripped the controls. "That's bad. Too much exposure and the shields won't hold." Rill jumped up, eyes wide, and rushed to the engine room. He worked furiously, adjusting the power flow. Sparks burst from the panels, but the shields grew brighter, stronger. Morrow steered the ship through the radiation storm, sweat dripping down his face. The ship shook violently, but the shields held steady under Real's improvements. When they finally passed the storm, Marrow slumped in his seat, breathing hard. "We made it, thanks to you." Real stumbled out of the engine room, his face tired but determined. He gave a small nod, then climbed into the bunk without a word. Morrow laughed softly. "Always the same. Work, save my life, then take a nap." That night, as the ship sailed quietly again, Morrow sat in the cockpit, thinking. He had never trusted aliens much. Traders told stories of strange creatures, of beings who were dangerous or untrustworthy. But Real was different. Real had saved him, helped him, and asked for nothing except a place to rest. It struck Morrow that perhaps humanity had been too quick to fear the unknown. Here, in his tiny ship, he had proof that friendship could be built without words, without contracts, without anything more than trust and shared effort. For the first time in years, Morrow felt hope, not just for himself but for the future of humans and aliens alike. The stars stretched out ahead, endless and mysterious, but Morrow no longer felt small or alone. He had a partner now. An unlikely bond had been formed between a tired human trader and a 4-foot mechanic who claimed his bunk and somehow his heart as well. The Starlight Road sailed quietly through the mining belt, the hum of its newly upgraded engine a constant comfort. Morrow felt a strange sense of pride. The ship was fast, strong, and reliable, and Rill had made it almost perfect. But Morrow knew that the belt was not a safe place. It was full of hidden dangers, spinning asteroids, loose debris, and raiders looking for easy prey. As the ship moved between massive rocks, the radar beeped urgently. Morrow's stomach dropped. 2 large ships were approaching, moving quickly and deliberately. Their shapes were sharp and aggressive, their hulls marked with dark symbols. Raiders. Morrow swallowed hard. "Real," he said, glancing at the small alien sitting nearby. "We've got company." Rill's wide eyes followed the radar screen. He tapped the engine console once, then pointed at Morrow, indicating he understood. No words were needed. The raiders fired first. Bright beams of energy struck the Starlight Road. Alarms screamed. Sparks flew from panels, and Morrow's heart raced. He twisted the throttle, trying to dodge. The ship shuddered, but it held together. Rill jumped into the engine room. His small hands worked furiously on panels, pulling wires, replacing circuits, and adjusting the power flow. He moved with speed and precision, his glowing tools sparking as he worked. Morrow watched the shields on the control screen rise higher, and brighter than ever before. "You really do know your way around this ship," Morrow said, gripping the controls. "I don't know how, but we might survive this." The raiders fired again, aiming for the Starlight Road's engines. Morrow twisted the ship through the narrow gaps between massive spinning rocks. The shields shimmered, deflecting the beams. But the raiders were skilled. Morrow could see they were trying to trap him. "Hang on, Rill," Morrow muttered. "We need a miracle here." Rill did not answer. He worked silently, his eyes focused, his small body moving quickly through the engine room. Sparks flew, wires connected, and systems hummed louder than ever. The engine roared as if it were alive. Suddenly, the ship surged forward with incredible speed. Morrow's eyes widened. "You did it!" he shouted. "You really did it!" The Starlight Road weaved through the asteroids, the raiders struggling to keep up. Morrow twisted and turned, dodging rocks, firing defensive pulses from the ship's weak weapons. Every movement was precise, every adjustment perfect. Rill climbed into the cockpit, tapping a panel to increase shield power. "I trust you," Morrow said. The alien blinked, then pressed another control. Together, they guided the ship through the dangerous belt. The chase lasted for what felt like hours. Beams struck, rocks spun dangerously, and Morrow's hands ached from holding the controls. But the ship responded beautifully, faster and stronger than any human-built craft should. Finally, the raiders gave up. They turned away, their shapes disappearing, into the darkness of space. Morrow sank into his chair, gasping for breath. "We made it," he whispered. "We actually made it." Rill tapped the console once, then pointed at the bunk, signaling that the battle was over and it was time to rest. Morrow laughed softly. "Always the same," he said. "Fight off raiders, save my life, and then go sleep. I don't know whether to thank you or be mad." That night, Morrow lay on the floor, exhausted but alive. He watched Rill curl up in the bunk, peaceful and content. He thought about the tiny alien's courage, skill, and determination. Despite being small, Rill had saved both him and the ship from certain destruction. The next morning, Morrow walked through the ship checking for damage. There were small scratches and minor dents, but nothing critical. Every system Rill had upgraded was intact, stronger than ever. Morrow shook his head in amazement. "I don't know how you do it," he said aloud. "I don't even know how you think. But this ship, it's perfect." Rill followed him silently, watching his human companion with wide, intelligent eyes. Morrow felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had never felt companionship like this before. During the day, Morrow and Rill worked together. Morrow learned more about the alien's strange methods, watching the glowing tools, the symbols, and the careful precision. Rill, in turn, seemed to study Morrow, understanding his way of thinking and predicting his actions. By evening, the belt was behind them, and the stars stretched peacefully ahead. The starlight road moved smoothly, no alarms, no dangers, no tension. Morrow sat in the cockpit, hands resting easily. Rill climbed into the bunk, pulling the blanket close. Morrow smiled. "You? No, little guy. I think we make a good team. Maybe the best I've ever had." Rill blinked slowly, then tapped his chest. Morrow laughed softly. "I get it. Me too." For the first time, Morrow realized something important. The bond between them was not just about survival. It was about trust, teamwork, and understanding. A human and a small alien, traveling together, through space, relying on each other to face dangers and challenges. Morrow leaned back, looking out at the endless stars. He thought about the journey ahead, the unknown worlds waiting for them, and the adventures yet to come. With Rill by his side, he no longer felt alone. He no longer feared the dangers of the belt or the emptiness of space. Somewhere in the vast galaxy, a small 4-foot mechanic and a human trader had found something rare and powerful: friendship, partnership, and respect. And that was stronger than any ship, stronger than any engine, stronger than any threat that the universe could send their way. The stars were quiet. The ship moved steadily, and Morrow finally allowed himself to rest, knowing that together they could face anything. The Starlight Road had finally cleared the mining belt, leaving the spinning rocks and dangerous currents behind. Morrow leaned back in his chair, hands resting on the controls, and let out a deep breath. His ship was intact. The engines hummed smoothly, and Rill was curled in the bunk, sleeping peacefully. For the first time in a long while, Morrow felt safe. But a question had been growing in his mind. Rill had been aboard for days now. He had saved the engine, improved the ship, and even guided Morrow through danger without a single complaint. The alien had claimed the bunk, yes, but what would happen when they reached the nearest station? Would Rill leave? Would he disappear as suddenly as he had appeared? Morrow had to ask. The next morning, he approached the small alien as he was checking the engine systems. Ryl's wide eyes looked up at him, blinking slowly. Morrow took a deep breath. "Rill, we're close to the station. You know, you could leave if you want. I can drop you off, and you can go your way. I won't stop you." Rill tilted his head. He looked at the controls, then back at Morrow. His wide eyes seemed to study every movement. Slowly, he tapped his chest once, then pointed at the bunk. Morrow frowned. "You mean you want to stay?" Rill gave a small nod, his first clear gesture of decision. Morrow blinked. "Stay on my ship? For good?" Rill tapped the floor, then the engine console, then his chest again. The meaning was clear. He wanted to travel with Morrow, not just for a few days, but as a permanent companion. Morrow's lips curved into a smile. "Well, I guess that makes sense. You've already fixed everything, saved my life, and improved this ship more than I ever could. And I have to admit, I like having someone to share it with." Rill blinked and climbed into the bunk with a satisfied grunt. He adjusted the blanket, then looked at Morrow as if asking, "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Morrow said firmly. "If you want to stay, then you're welcome. But don't expect the bunk to be your only responsibility. We have a lot of work ahead, and you'll have to help keep the ship running." Rill tapped his chest proudly and gave a small grunt. Morrow laughed. "Good. I think that means agreement." The next hours passed quickly. Morrow guided the ship into the station's docking bay. The bay was crowded with traders, miners, and other travelers. Ships of all shapes and sizes filled the space. Morrow secured the Starlight Road in a quiet corner, thankful for the improvements Rill had made. The ship looked almost new, shining, brighter than most in the bay. Morrow stepped out of the cockpit, stretching his legs. Rill followed quietly, carrying his toolbox. Morrow felt a strange pride watching the small alien move among the taller beings in the bay. He noticed that Rill's presence drew curiosity. People stared at the tiny mechanic, whispering among themselves, but Rill didn't seem to care. His focus was on the ship, on the work that needed to be done. They spent the day gathering supplies, repairing minor damages, and stocking the cargo hold. Morrow moved quickly, but he noticed how Rill's methods were different. The alien did not rush. Each movement was precise, careful, deliberate. By the time they finished, the Starlight Road looked stronger than when they had left the mining belt. As the sun-like lights of the station began to dim, Morrow leaned against the ship's hull. "You know, Rill, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you stayed. I was alone for so long, and now it feels like we belong together on this ship." Rill tilted his head and gave a small nod. He tapped the engine console lightly, then his chest, signaling that he agreed. Morrow smiled. "You know, I think we make a good team. Strange team, maybe, but good." Rill blinked and climbed into the bunk, stretching out as if he had claimed it for life. Morrow chuckled and lay down, on the floor nearby. He could feel a strange sense of comfort knowing that Rill was beside him, guarding the ship and in some way watching over him too. That night, Morrow thought about the days to come. The galaxy was wide and unpredictable. Many dangers awaited travelers, like him. But now, with Rill at his side, he felt ready for anything. The tiny alien had proven that strength did not come from size alone, and courage did not come from years of experience. Rill had faced danger, worked tirelessly, and chosen to stay, not because of reward, but because he had found trust in Morrow. Morrow realized something important. Life in the stars was better when shared. He had always believed he could survive alone, but survival was not enough. Companionship, trust, and loyalty were what made life worth living. And in Rill, he had found all of those things. The next morning, they prepared to leave the station. Supplies loaded, systems checked, and cargo secured, Morrow took the pilot's seat, while Rill monitored the engines. Morrow looked at the small alien and smiled. Ready for the next adventure? Rill tapped the console, then the floor, then his chest, signaling absolute readiness. As the Starlight Road lifted off the docking bay, leaving behind the busy station lights, Morrow felt a surge of confidence. He knew the galaxy would be full of challenges, hostile ships, unknown hazards, and unexpected turns, but he also knew that he would not face them alone. Rill had made a choice, and Morrow had made one too. Together, they would travel through the stars, face dangers, explore unknown worlds, and build a bond that could withstand anything. The ship soared into space, engines humming smoothly. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, bright and full of promise. Morrow leaned back, eyes shining with excitement, and watched Rill curl up in the bunk, small but strong, silent but loyal. In that moment, Morrow understood something he had never realized before. Strength was not measured by size, speed, or firepower. True strength came from trust, courage, and the willingness to stand together. And with Rill at his side, Morrow knew they were stronger than anything the galaxy could throw at them. The Starlight. Road sailed forward, ready for new adventures, carrying a human trader and a tiny alien mechanic who had claimed a bunk and a place in his life for good. The Starlight Road sailed through empty space, leaving the busy station behind. The stars stretched endlessly in all directions, bright and distant. Morrow sat in the cockpit, hands resting lightly on the controls. The ship hummed smoothly, a quiet song of power and life. Rill was curled in the bunk, eyes wide open, watching the navigation panel with curiosity. His glowing tools rested neatly beside him, ready for any emergency. Morrow glanced over and smiled. The tiny alien had become part of the ship as much as the engines, the hull, and the controls. "You know, Rill," Morrow said softly, "when you first appeared, I didn't know what to think. A little alien walks in, fixes my engine, and claims, 'My bed.' I thought I'd lost my mind." Rill blinked slowly, then tapped his chest once, signaling he remembered. Morrow laughed. "But now, I can't imagine being alone again. You've changed everything. The ship, my life, even how I see the stars." Rill climbed out of the bunk and walked over, small feet making light taps on the floor. He gestured at the controls, pointing to a blinking light. Morrow nodded, understanding. The alien wanted to check the engine systems again. Together, they moved through the ship. Morrow guided the ship while Rill inspected the engines, panels, and conduits. Sparks flew as Rill worked, precise and careful. Every adjustment improved the ship. Morrow had never seen efficiency like this. Every action Rill took had purpose. Hours passed, and the Starlight Road continued its steady course. Morrow and Rill had developed a rhythm. Communication required no words sometimes. A glance, a tap, or a gesture was enough. The trust between them had grown beyond what Morrow had imagined possible. At one point, a small alert flashed on the radar. A debris field was ahead, moving slowly through space. Morrow's heart tightened. "Rill, we'll need to maneuver carefully." The alien nodded. Together they guided the ship, weaving through the debris with incredible precision. The shields held steady, and the engines responded perfectly. Morrow felt a thrill he had never experienced before. His ship was no longer just a machine. It was alive, guided by the hands and mind of a mechanic unlike any other. Once the danger passed, Morrow sat back, breathing hard but smiling. "You know, little guy, I never thought I'd be happy flying through hazards. But with you here, it feels different, exciting, safe, almost like home." Rill blinked slowly, then tapped the console and his chest. Morrow laughed softly. "I get it. You feel the same way." The journey continued for days. Morrow and Rill stopped at minor stations, gathered supplies, and repaired minor damages from asteroid collisions. Every time they worked together, the bond between them grew stronger. Morrow realized that Rill was not just a mechanic, he was a partner, a guide, and a friend. One evening, Morrow watched the alien in the bunk. The stars reflected in Rill's wide eyes, and he seemed peaceful, content. Morrow sat nearby, thinking about the journey they had shared. He remembered when Rill first appeared, fixing the broken engine and taking the bunk. Back then, Morrow had been angry, confused, and unsure. Now, he felt gratitude, admiration, and a strange warmth he had never expected. "You know," Morrow whispered, "I used to think life in space was lonely, that survival was all that mattered. But now I see it's not about surviving, it's about sharing the journey. You've taught me that." Rill blinked slowly, then tapped his chest and the floor, signaling understanding and agreement. Days later, the Starlight Road approached a distant colony. The ship glided smoothly through the docking bay, engines quiet and controlled. Morrow and Rill worked together to secure the ship and unload cargo. People around them stared at the small alien, curious and amazed. Morrow could see their wonder, but he knew the truth. Rill was more than a mechanic. He was a hero in his own quiet way, saving ships and lives without seeking recognition. After the work was done, Morrow leaned against the hull and watched Rill. The boss alien tapped the toolbox, then his chest, and gave a small grunt. Morrow smiled. "You're proud, aren't you?" "You should be. I don't know what I'd do without you." Rill blinked, then curled back into the bunk, signaling contentment. Morrow laughed softly. "Always the same. Work, save my life, take the bunk. But I wouldn't have it any other way." That night, as the colony lights dimmed and the stars stretched above, Morrow lay on the floor beside the bunk. He felt a sense of peace he had never known in space. The ship, the stars, and the tiny alien beside him all felt connected. Life was no longer about struggle alone. Life was about trust, loyalty, and companionship. The next morning, Morrow prepared the ship for departure. Rill inspected the engines, moving quickly and efficiently. Morrow realized that no matter where they went, he would never be alone again. Rill had made a choice to stay, and Morrow had chosen to accept it. Together, they were stronger than any challenge the galaxy could offer. As the Starlight Road lifted off, the stars stretched ahead, endless and bright. Morrow sat in the cockpit, hands firm on the controls. Rill curled in the bunk, eyes wide and alert. The bond between them was clear, silent, but unbreakable. Morrow smiled. "Ready for the next adventure, Rill?" The alien tapped his chest, then the floor, then the console. The message was clear. Yes, always ready. Together, a human trader and a 4-foot alien mechanic sailed through the stars. They faced dangers, explored unknown worlds, and built a life aboard a ship stronger than either could have managed alone. The galaxy was vast, but together they were unstoppable. The Starlight Road sailed on, engines humming, stars stretching forever, carrying two unlikely friends who had found trust, respect, and companionship in the endless void of space.